Friends, in the previous class, we looked at process analysis. Today, we will look at one more important pattern of organization, that is cause effect analysis. So, a cause effect relationship, it means there are two entities and one makes the second thing happen or occur. Sometimes one cause can have several effects. For example, global warming may lead to increased sea levels, melting of polar ice caps, weird weather patterns, decreased agriculture output, among other things. Sometimes several causes may be behind a single effect. Say, for example, if you look at World War I, it was a result of multiple causes: defense alliances, imperialism, militarism, nationalism, among many other things. So, one condition or event brings the other one. So, technically the one which brings about events, the cause, it is called the antecedent, and the one which appears as a result of something else, the effect, it is called the consequent. So, for example, studying hard would be antecedent for the consequent of getting good grades. Similarly, passive smoking would be antecedent, while lung cancer among non-smokers is the consequent. So, in order to say that there is cause effect relationship between two entities, researchers argue that three criteria must be met. Let us look at them. The first one is the cause has to occur before the effect. So, this is called temporal precedence. Say, for example, eating healthy food, it leads to immunity increase. So, eating healthy food has to happen first. Similarly, watching violent TV shows has to happen first, and then its result, kids becoming violent, may appear. But such direct cause effect relationships are very difficult to establish. For example, so in this example, do we say watching violent TV shows make kids violent, or kids who are already violent in nature get more attracted towards such violent TV shows? So, which one causes which one? So, that we can confidently say only with enough evidence. Second one, so whenever the cause happens, the effect must also occur. It means when the cause is not there, the effect also must not happen. For example, whenever you take paracetamol, your fever reduces. So, if you do not take paracetamol, the fever does not reduce. So, this is the relationship. If this does not happen always, or it happens only on some occasions, then it could just be what we call coincidence, or there may be other factors which are responsible for that effect. So, this is the second criterion. Moving on, the third one is no other extraneous factors can explain the relationship between the cause and the effect. So, for example, you are teaching a group of students, and then at the end you want to say that their proficiency in English has increased. So, now you should be confident about the cause effect relationship between teaching and increase in proficiency levels. What if there are other factors which are responsible for this. For example, reading outside the classroom, coaching classes, help from parents, many other factors. So, keeping in mind those extraneous factors, we should try to establish the cause effect relationship. Now, moving on to types of causal reasoning. First one is called partial or contributory cause. So, the factor which brings about a particular effect may just be one of the causes, not the one and only cause. For example, if you look at investigative reports about air crash incidents, pilot error is one of the causes. So, combined with other things such as bad weather, mechanical problems, pilot error can lead to air crash. Second one, necessary cause. So, necessary cause means a condition that must be present in order for the effect to occur. For example, an MBBS degree or other degree in medicines is a necessary prerequisite to open a clinic. So, this is a necessary cause. Without this, the effect cannot occur. Then, sufficient cause, a condition capable of bringing about the effect in and of itself. So, there is one say cause and that alone is sufficient to bring about the effect. For example, if you do not have a valid DL, it can lead to penalty or other kinds of punishment. So, this one thing is just a sufficient cause. Necessary but not sufficient. Sometimes a cause may be there and it may be a necessary one, but in itself it may not bring about the desired effect. Say for example, presence of water is a necessary condition for the existence of life, but does it guarantee the existence of life? No. So, sometimes there may be water, but there may not be any life. For example, now the evidence shows that water is present on Mars, maybe in different forms other than what we see on the earth, but that is not a conclusive proof to say that there is life on Mars. Then necessary and sufficient. So, this kind of cause effect relationship in real world is actually very hard to come by. It means one cause is necessary and that alone is sufficient to bring about the desired effect. Say for example, if you look at this, this is an example from logic. So, if you argue that today is neither Saturday nor Sunday, then it necessarily means today is a weekday. So, today not being either Saturday or Sunday is both necessary and sufficient cause to say that today is a weekday. Then reciprocal causation, it means there is a very close relationship between cause effect. So, one factor causes the other, then this may be related to the first one. For example, some studies have shown that stuttering and shyness, there is reciprocal causation between the two. So, stuttering causes shyness, and because you are shy, you may have the problem of stuttering. So, this is reciprocal causation. Causal chain or multi-step causation. So, what it means is, so there is one cause factor, it leads to something else, which in turn leads to something else, and so there is a chain reaction. So, if you recall from our discussion from the previous class, we talked about chain reaction in nuclear plant. So, in the same way here, one factor leads to another and then to another, and it continues. For example, media reports about famous people who committing suicide, and this may produce imitation suicides. So, one is famous people, they commit suicide and that is reported in media, that again leads to several imitation suicides in a causal chain. So, these causal relationships are often inferred, not directly observed. Of course, in some cases you may be able to observe this cause effect relationship directly, but most often based on available evidence and other factors, we infer this cause effect relationship. For example, doctors conduct postmortem to identify the cause of death. So, looking at the circumstantial evidence and the body, doctors decide the death may have been caused by because various reasons. So, this is a kind of inferring the causal relationship. So, we can look at effects or symptoms and then we refer back to the cause. For example, so when a person has fever, then we can say that person has some sort of infection. So, fever is only the effect or the symptom. Then if you see all the flags flying at half mast, then from that you can infer that there is some national mourning. So, this is what we mean by inferring the cause looking at the effects or symptoms. Most people have a commonsensical understanding of causation. For example, if I heat it up, water will boil, or if I turn in the key, the car starts. So, when I exercise, I sweat. So, these are simple cause effect things which we can observe directly, but this is not always the case. So, as we have observed, many times you need to look at the effects, the symptoms, and then infer from it about the causes. But sometimes people make mistakes in inferring, and there we talk about reasoning errors. So, what are these reasoning errors? Let us look at them. First one is correlation does not imply causation. So, this is one of the most common mistakes. If two things happen at the same time, then we tend to say that they are related. There is cause effect relationship between the two, but correlation does not necessarily mean that two things are logically connected or one cause the other. There may be another common cause, or sometimes there may be reverse causation as well. So, what is ignoring a common cause? For example, if you say that ice cream sales and number of drownings increase in the summer. So, if you say there is connection between these two things, increase in ice cream sales and increase in number of drownings, then that would be a reasoning error, because here we are not considering the obvious common cause, that is the hot weather. So, if you ignore a common cause, then this leads to a kind of reasoning error. Second, reverse causation. So, let us say there are two things, x and y. So, y happens after x. So, does it mean x has caused y? Not necessarily. Actually, y may have cost X. For example, poor economic conditions and increase in high crime rate. So, which one is cause, which one is effect here? Actually, people have argued for both the possibilities. So, some people say because of high crime, businesses won't invest and that leads to poor economic conditions. Some others have argued that because there are poor economic conditions, there is very little employment and no or very little income, and that leads to crimes. So, both are possible. So, this was the first reasoning error. So, correlation does not imply causation. Second one is called post hoc ergo propter hoc. It means temporal precedence does not imply causation. So, we have discussed here necessary condition, sufficient, necessary but not sufficient, necessary and sufficient. So, just temporal precedence does not mean there is cause effect relationship. For example, recession and job loss. So, if you say there is job loss because of recession, that is would be too simplistic way of looking at it. There may be several other reasons behind it. When it comes to this kind of temporal precedence and assuming cause effect relationship in a wrong way, one of the common mistakes we do is we assume a common cause for several things, and mostly superstitions are behind such things. So, for example, a cat crosses your path when you are say driving, and then you meet with an accident, you have several other problems and you blame the cats crossing your path for all those things. So, this is more of superstition than actually what you can argue with the help of evidence. Then another problem is oversimplification or reductionism. It means there is a complex problem and you reduce it to a single or a simple cause. Say for example, if you say the decline of the family unit is responsible for all of society's problems such as drug and alcohol addiction, increased divorce rate, increase in sexual assaults and so on. So, this is a very complex problem, but it has been reduced to a simple cause, that is the decline of the family unit, but actually there may be several causes behind it. So, not considering those, it has been reduced to something very obvious, something which in commonsensical understanding to a single simple cause. This is you can often see in ads. So, you equate and associate products with favorable images and lifestyles in most of these ads. So, beer is equated with fun and good times. You wear a particular fragrance and it leads to attracting the members of the opposite sex. So, this is a kind of reductionism. You have reduced a complex thing to something very simple. So, before saying that there is cause effect relationship between two things, two events, we need to ask ourselves some clear questions, and only when we are satisfied then we should go about making that claim. So, what are these? Is the cause necessary to produce the effect? For example, is a degree from a reputed college university necessary to be successful in life? So, this is what most people say, you want to be successful in life. So, you need to first have degree from a reputed institute, but the question is it a necessary cause? Does a particular brand of cell phone enhance one's status? So, you want to increase your status among your friends in the social circle, then do you need to spend lot of money and purchase a particular brand of cell phone? Then, is the cause sufficient to produce the effect? So, for example, does being in love ensure that a couple will be happy together? So, is this sufficient, being in love, to be happy after the marriage? Are there cumulative additional causes? So, do not say that there is just one thing, one cause behind a complex effect, complex problem. For example, urban density, unemployment, poverty, all these together may lead to crime, not just low economic conditions. Are there alternative causal explanations? So, if something has happened and you think there is only one obvious thing, the question you need to ask yourself is, so are there other possible factors? So, can it be explained with the help of other factors? For example, so if you look at the cases of mass shootings, there may be several factors behind it. So, blaming it on just one particular reason, one particular, say there is no gun law in the country and therefore, it leads to people easily buying guns and then it leads to mass shootings, then that may be simplification of the whole complex issue. Are there countervailing causes? So, would other factors or circumstances prevent the effect from occurring? So, for example, a computer is getting hung often. So, what could be the reasons? Is it because of a virus attack, or it could be just because of some incompatible software, or you have recently updated something and that is causing the problem. So, obviously, we think there is some virus attack, but we also need to look at other possible factors. Okay. Now, let us look at some statements, analyze them and then see if the cause effect relationship between them is satisfactory. Let us look at this. An irritating commercial aired during my favorite television show. I got hiccups. Irritating commercials always make me get hiccups. So, the first one here, it establishes cause effect relationship between two things. So, according to this, cause is irritating commercials and the effect is hiccups. But can we explain this cause effect relationship? It is very difficult. Probably you got hiccups because of something else. So, were you having food at the time, or were you suffering from some other disease? So, those things are not clear here. So, just to say that by watching an irritating commercial, I get hiccups, that is very difficult to establish. Okay. Second one, Mary comes to class just as the bell rings every day. Mary's arrival at class causes the bell to ring. So, this is a typical problem of correlation means causation kind of analysis. So, Mary is coming to class and bell ringing, these two things happen at the same time, but then does it mean there is cause effect relationship between them? So, definitely no. So, that is the problem here. Look at third, depression causes sickness. People who are terminally ill are also often depressed. So, depression can cause illness. So, what are the things here? So, one is depression causes sickness. People who are terminally ill are often depressed. So, depression can cause illness. So, this argument here is problematic. People who are terminally ill are depressed, but because of many other reasons. So, drawing on that, it argues depression can cause illness, whereas here illness has caused the depression. Fourth one, when the ocean is extremely polluted, the corals die. So, the cause effect relationship here is polluted ocean and corals dying. So, this cause effect relationship is actually well established with the help of studies. So, this we can accept. Fifth one, many people who drink coffee are also thin. Therefore, coffee causes one to lose weight. So, this is here a problematic thing. So, many people drink coffee are also thin. This could just be coincidence. So, this does not establish cause effect relationship between drinking coffee and losing weight. So, people who drink coffee are thin maybe because of several other things, several other factors. So, that is not considered here. Sixth one, some people believe dinosaurs went extinct because a large meteor hit the earth. So, we know here that there is some evidence about meteor attack and dinosaurs going extinct. So, this cause effect we can accept, there is evidence for this. Look at 7. Sarah liked playing with army toys when she was a child. Sarah joined the army as an adult. Playing with an army toys makes you want to join the army. So, here this is just one case. So, Sarah played with toys and then she joined the army. So, then on the basis of that, making this cause effect relationship is problem. Also, playing with toys and joining the army, this is not established. This could be just coincidence, or she joined army maybe because of several other factors. So, those factors are not mentioned here, not discussed, and therefore, so this cause effect relationship is actually problematic. Now, we will look at a cause effect text. This is called Why We Stay, a deeper look at domestic abuse, written by Ali Owens. Let us read it in detail. The choice is clear. The man is a terrible person, and obviously we will now look at a cause effect text. This is called Why We Stay, a deeper look at domestic abuse. It is written by Ali Owens. Let us look at it in detail. The choice is clear. The man is a terrible person, and obviously the woman should leave. If she stays, we believe she is partly responsible for the physical and emotional damage inflicted upon her, because she could have prevented it by getting the hell out of Dodge and never looking back. In a way, we suggest tentatively, isn't she almost asking for it? So, if we look at the first paragraph, the topic of this text becomes clear. This is about domestic abuse, and even when a woman is being abused, sometimes she decides to stay, and why does she do so? Then the text goes on to discuss factors which make women stay in abusive relationships in detail. So, let us look at the rest of the text. Real domestic abuse rarely plays out like this. It is never simple and it is never black and white. Leaving is never the easy choice. It is just one more painful choice in a reality full of painful choices. And the people who insist this isn't so have no idea. I, on the other hand, as a survivor of domestic abuse, have quite a bit of an idea. Now that that's out of the way, here are 5 reasons someone in an abusive relationship may stay with their abuser. Reasons that have nothing at all to do with financial stability. So, now writer says she is going to discuss 5 reasons why someone in an abusive relationship stays in the same relationship and does not get out of it. The writer is discussing these things based on personal experiences. So, what are these 5 reasons? First one, we are afraid of being shamed, judged, hated or accused of lying. You hear it all the time. An allegation of domestic abuse is waved away with the reasoning, I know him, he would never do that, she is making it all up, he is a nice guy. Newsflash, people with abusive tendencies are often very, very good at creating a public image that differs tremendously with what happens behind closed doors. In fact, a calculating and manipulative mindset is extremely common in people who abuse their partners. Anyone can seem nice. Abusers don't wear signs around their necks claiming that someone you know isn't capable of abuse because he seems so nice is absolutely not a sound method of reasoning, because you do not know the whole story. During the 9-year duration of our relationship, there were so many instances in which I wanted to tell someone what was going on, but I was paralyzed by fear, fear that no one would believe me, fear that they'd think I was only looking for attention, fear that they'd call me a fool for sticking around, fear that they'd label me a liar, just the way so many people have done to Amber Heard without knowing anything about what actually transpired. So, this is the first reason the writer is here talking about, that women are afraid of being shamed, judged, hated or even accused of lying, because abusers are often very good at creating a good public image. So, this is reason number 1. 2. Abuse is generally cyclical and most abusers follow a pattern that keeps victims feeling trapped. This is another behavioral pattern that is extremely common in abusive relationships. It was as though my ex could sense when I was about to throw in the towel and he'd suddenly be back to his old loving self, making it very difficult for me to justify leaving him, especially because I loved him and desperately wanted us to be able to function in a healthy relationship. And occasionally, generally after a particularly cruel incident, he would have a moment of clarity in which he would get down on his knees, sobbing, telling me he hated himself for what he had done to me and begging me to forgive him. He would promise me that he'd get counseling, that he'd do whatever it took to get better, things would be different. In doing so, he was giving me hope, maybe he'll change and everything will get better. Faced with the notion of finally having a healthy relationship with him, I found I couldn't leave. I'd remember the good times we'd shared and feel optimistic that there would be more of them on the horizon. This is precisely how abusers wield control over their partners. They dangle the carrot, the promise of change, just out of reach, so that the victim always feels hopeful that the change will actually occur and feels compelled to stick it out. So, this is the second reason, that the reason is that abusers keep the victims trapped. Sometimes they pretend as if they are going to change and things will get better. So, the abusers feel, there is change is soon going to come, yes, but it is kept just out of reach. So, that the victim, they always feel hopeful that the change will actually occur, and so they do not want to get out of the relationship. So, this is the second reason. Third one, we love our partners. Anyone who has ever been in love knows that it is no simple thing. Is it possible to love someone who abuses you? Absolutely. Furthermore, since abusive behavior is very rarely black and white, it makes things much more complicated than should I stay or should I go. For example, those moments of clarity I spoke of were the undoing of me. Despite everything he had put me through, to see him collapse in tears like that, to see him hurt so much, nearly destroyed me. So, even though I knew all too well the terrible things he had done, in those moments he seemed to me like a lost, broken boy, and I would ache for him. I loved him so much that seeing his pain felt far worse than the pain he inflicted on me, and I couldn't walk away, not when he was hurting, not when he needed me. So, the third reason is, the writer says, the victims most often have love for their abusers, and whenever the abusers try to pretend that they are actually guilty of what they have done, those moments can actually make victims feel bad about the possible thing of leaving him. Fourth one, emotional abuse, manipulation and gaslighting have wreaked havoc on our self-esteem, and we not trust our own thoughts or feelings. My ex gave me some pretty wicked bruises in our 9 years together, but overwhelmingly the most crippling form of abuse he bestowed upon me was emotional. Gaslighting is a term describing a form of mental abuse in which the victim is manipulated into doubting their own memory, perceptions or sanity, and it is very, very dangerous and so much more prevalent than most people realize. Remember when I said that a common trait of an abusive personality type is to be calculating and manipulative? That all comes into play here in a particularly cruel way when the abuser uses these traits against his partner. It starts subtly, imperceptibly. The abuser will slowly begin to whittle away at her self-esteem, suggesting perhaps that she has emotional issues or is always overreacting. Small things, nothing you could do in all fairness call abuse yet, but the seeds have been planted. As the years go on, he will take these insecurities that he has deliberately given her and use them against her, manipulating her more and more until she is so mired in his mind games that she has no idea what to believe or even who she is. And if she ever so much as mentions the possibility of abuse, he will twist everything around until she believes she is crazy for even thinking such a thing, and that everything is actually her fault. Doubting the validity of your own thoughts and experiences is exhausting and terrifying, and it leaves you very, very vulnerable. Abusers know this. When you spend years being told that your thoughts and feelings are inherently incorrect, you don't know what to feel, and often you will wind up hating yourself instead of the person who hurts you, because you assume you must have done something to deserve it. When you've been made to believe you can't trust yourself, living an abusive situation becomes impossible. The fourth reason is that the writer says most often abusers play with the emotions of the victims. They sort of create an impression that the woman herself is actually crazy even to think that abuse is happening. So, this is a kind of emotional harassment. Fifth one, we fear retaliation. Simply running away from an abusive partner does not always mean the abuse will stop. In many cases, abusers will go so far as to stalk, rape or even kill the women who try to leave them. Sometimes it is very literally not safe to leave. Luckily for me, I was able to immediately move to a different city an hour away, which lessened my chances of encountering my ex. I did not have to constantly keep my guard up for fear I would run into him at the grocery store. Nor did I believe he would go so far as to be a danger to me. But many women are not so lucky, and the thought of leaving makes them legitimately fear for their lives. So, the fifth reason the writer mentions is actually these abusers can stalk, rape or even sometimes kill if women try to leave them, and women fear this kind of retaliation. So, now let us come to the final paragraph. The roots of abuse are deep and twisted, and it is impossible to understand the dynamic of a relationship that you yourself are not a part of. Next time you find yourself tempted to say something judgmental about someone who has remained in an abusive situation for a period of time, please remember these words from someone who knows and just don't. Victim blaming is all too common in today's society. My hope is that if we shed more light on a topic classically shrouded in darkness, we can put an end to the victim blaming and help keep people safer in their relationships. So, here the main purpose of the writer is to throw light on this general trend of blaming the victims. So, by listing out the reasons for women continuing to stay in abusive relationships, she argues that it is not always very simple to leave an abusive relationship, and it is a very complex thing. So, people who oversimplify it and tend to blame the victim should think about these reasons before making such a statement. So, this is what she is trying to argue here. So, as I mentioned, the writer talks about these reasons, 5 reasons based on her personal experience. So, she was in an abusive relationship and she has got out of it. So, on the basis of that she lists reasons. So, this is a typical cause effect relationship kind of text. We will look at one more text now. This is called, Are the effects of global warming really that bad? 8 degrees Fahrenheit. It may not sound like much, perhaps the difference between wearing a sweater and not wearing one on an early spring day. But for the world in which we live, which climate experts project will be at least 8 degrees warmer by 2100, should global emissions continue on their current path, this small rise will have grave consequences, ones that are already becoming apparent for every ecosystem and living thing, including us. So, this text, if you see this introductory paragraph, is about effects of global warming. It introduces the topic. There are some general remarks that the global temperature is going to increase by 8 degrees Fahrenheit by 2100, and what consequences it may have. So, the rest of the text talks about these effects. First is more frequent and severe weather. Higher temperatures are worsening many types of disasters, including storms, heat waves, floods and droughts. So, the first effect the writer here talks about is severe weather patterns. You can then see that the writer here quotes an expert. Extreme weather events are costing more and more, says Alia Haq, Deputy Director of NRDC's Clean Power Plan Initiative. The number of billion-dollar weather disasters is expected to rise. Then in the second paragraph, you can see that the writer here quotes some studies and mentions statistics to support it. For example, in 2015, there were 10 weather and climate disaster events in the United States, including severe storms, floods, drought and wildfires that caused at least $1 billion in losses. So, a particular effect is mentioned, but unlike the previous text, which is based on personal experiences, here it is based on studies and available statistics. Second effect, higher death rates. Today's scientists point to climate change as the biggest global health threat of the 21st century. It is a threat that impacts all of us, especially children, the elderly, low income communities and minorities, and in a variety of direct and indirect ways. As temperatures spike, so does the incidence of illness, emergency room visits and death. So, the writer here is talking about increase in death rate. There are more hot days in places where people are not used to it, Huck says. So, here again the writer quotes an expert. They do not have air conditioning or can't afford it. 1 or 2 days is not a big deal, but 4 days straight where temperatures do not go down even at night leads to severe health consequences. So, some more details are here given. Third one, higher wildlife extinction rates. As humans, we face a host of challenges, but we are certainly not the only ones catching heat. As land and sea undergo rapid changes, the animals that inhabit them are doomed to disappear if they do not adapt quickly enough. So, this is talking about the effect of global warming on wildlife. So, the writer here refers to a report. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change 2014 assessment, many land, freshwater and ocean species are shifting their geographic ranges to cooler climes or higher altitudes in an attempt to escape warming. So, there is also a reference to another study, 2015 study, and some statistics is here given to elaborate on this particular point. Now, we come to the final paragraph. There is no question climate change promises a frightening future and it is too late to turn back the clock. We have already taken care of that by pumping a century's worth of pollution into the air nearly unchecked. Even if we stopped all carbon dioxide emissions tomorrow, we would still see some effects, Huck says. That of course is the bad news, but there is also good news. By aggressively reducing our global emissions now, we can avoid a lot of the severe consequences that climate change would otherwise bring, says Huck. So, after discussing the effects, the concluding paragraph here talks about some suggestions, some actions which need to be taken. So, this text was about effects of global warming, and the effects are inferred on the basis of studies, reports, and the writer uses statistics, experts' opinion to back up the argument. Moving on. So, how do you draft a cause effect analysis paper? So, the first point is, what are you going to focus on, causes, effects or both? If you recall, the first text we looked at, why women stay in abusive relationships, that text focused on causes the second text which we looked at, effects of global warming. So, that obviously looked at effects. Sometimes you may want to look at both causes and effects. So, if you focus on causes, how significant is this particular cause and precisely how does it contribute? So, if you recall from our discussion about the text on women staying in abusive relationships, the writer lists 5 reasons and goes to discuss each one in detail. So, she even explains some terms used there, and using her personal experiences, she elaborates each point. If you focus on effects, so how important is this effect and what evidence will establish? So, if you look at this text we just discussed, I am going back here. So, effects of global warming. So, this is effect on weather patterns, then this is on human beings, higher death rates, and then this is on wildlife. So, writer here looks at effects on multiple factors, and of course, there is a lot of evidence, experts opinion, research studies, reports to establish the importance. So, you can use the opening to identify your topic and indicate whether you plan to discuss causes, effects or both. So, I am going back to the introductory paragraph this. So, here the writer makes it very clear that if you look at this part, this small rise will have grave consequences. So, it is clear that the text is going to discuss the effects. So, this is how you indicate in the introductory paragraph. Let us look at one more example. The recent decrease in street crime rate in the city stems primarily from its expanded educational program, growing job opportunities for young people and falling rate of drug addiction. In this essay, the writer is focusing on causes. The result is given, the result is decrease in street crime rate. Now, the author is going to delve into causes, and what are those causes? They are listed here, and so you expect the writer to take up each one of these in detail in the rest of the text. So, depending on the topic, there may be 3 main kinds of organization. So, one is multiple causes, single effect. For example, the thesis statement is something like this: air pollution is caused by the following factors: exhaust gases from cars, uncontrolled factory releases and burning of firewood for cooking and heating. So, the effect is given here, that is single effect, air pollution. There are multiple causes, 1, 2 and 3. So, these then get expanded into 3, at least 3 separate paragraphs. So, point number 1, exhaust gases from cars, no regulatory measures to check it, or sometimes even when they are very weak, there is no enforcement agency. Citizens are not conscientious, so they do not bother. Second is uncontrolled factory releases, no regular checks, outdated technology or equipment. Third one, burning of firewood for cooking or heating, poverty, poor socioeconomic conditions and alternate energy resources may not be available. So, this is one pattern. Second is single cause, multiple effects. Let us look at this example. Watching too much TV is one of the major sociological issues of this century, which has many effects on the physiology and psychology of people. So, there is single cause, that is watching too much TV. Effects are here multiple, physiological and psychological. So, they are then expanded in the subsequent paragraphs. Third one, causal chain, it is also called domino effect. Let us look at this example. Chlorofluorocarbon CFC gas may potentially bring the end of world. So, this looks like a huge statement to make. Now, you have to expand why you are saying so. So, you have to explain the causes, effects, how one leads to the other. Chlorofluorocarbon gases are contained in most deodorants and released by some factories into the air. So, this is the first stage. This gas causes the ozone layer to become thinner and finally disappear. So, this is the second stage. The unfiltered ultraviolet rays of the sun reach the earth and cause overheating in the poles. This is the next stage. As a result of this overheating in the poles, the polar ice melts. Because of this, the huge amount of water released from the poles leads to a rise in the sea level worldwide, and ultimately many low lying coastal areas will be submerged. So, you have explained how one thing leads to another and ultimately a dangerous consequence. So, this is the third pattern where you use causal chain. Briefly looking at language aspect, you need linkers to establish cause effect relationships. So, use appropriate transitions. For example, in order to talk about causes, you can use linkers like because, due to, since, and so on. For effects, you can use linkers like consequently, as a result, therefore, among other such linkers. So, you focus on immediate and direct causes. You limit yourself to causes that are close in time and related, otherwise it is difficult to establish the relationship. Strengthen your essay by using supporting evidence. Define technical terms, offer facts and stats, provide examples, so that your cause effect relationship becomes stronger. One important thing is you need to qualify your statements. This is called hedging. We will look at it in detail when we discuss language elements. For example, it appears that the cause was, it seems likely, the evidence may indicate. So, these kind of qualify your statements. Now, you can practice writing cause effect analysis on one of these topics. Reasons that relationships often fail in modern times. So, this relationship here could be between husband and wife, parents and children. So, what are the reasons? So, this asks for reasons. Effects of Bollywood on students. So, this essay focuses on effects. So, these could be positive, again positive in what sense, negative in what sense, you can focus on them. Reasons for popularity of social media among youth. So, social media like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, why are these popular? So, you need to focus on reasons. So, summing up, today we looked at cause effect relationship, and we also saw that we need to have strong evidence to establish a relationship between two events, two variables. Otherwise, we commit a reasoning error and the argument becomes weak. Thank you.